Hello, everyone. Well, we're going to get started because we have a lot going on today. Welcome to our Mid-Year Trends event. I am Renee Lee Wegge, and I am very happy to be on here with two of my other fellow trendologists. As you guys come rolling in, you guys want to say hi, Jacqueline and Hui?
Hi, so nice to see everybody today. Nice to see that there's lots of people joining remotely, a lot of remote workers still out there.
Hi everyone, nice to see you all again. Something I wish have the ability to do here is make everyone raise their hands to see who's joining us for the first time versus who's come again and
Oh,
again. I really want to know that distribution. There's no way for me to tell. Maybe someday Zoom will allow that feature to be implemented, but for now I will just
yeah,
guess.
we could do a poll next time. We have
Next time,
polls.
next time. Yeah, we have
Yes.
quite a lot of polls to go through today
Yeah,
actually. So I
we
think
have a
maybe it's
few
time to get
polls.
started.
If I can figure out how to do that on the fly, maybe I'll do that in the middle of this.
Oh, we do have some
Um,
first timers.
awesome. Yay. Well, welcome everyone. For all you first timers, make sure that you chat to everyone, and not just hosts and panelists. Jacqueline and I and we love to hear from you as well, but we want everyone to get in on the conversation. So make sure you do that. That is always our little PSA in the beginning. And then just a little thought starter as everyone is also getting in and telling us where you're coming in from. Maybe if you're a first timer, or if you are a staunch fan of us, which I know there are some super fans out there. We love you all. Let's see. What do you think has been the biggest trend this year? As we check in on mid-year trends, I feel like that is a good thing to kind of get your gauge on and have everyone talk about. So, oh, I see a lot of pickles, pickles for sure. A pickle for sure. Yeah, Dubai chocolate. So of course, a couple of you have hit that on the head. I just wanted to do a quick fun example that I don't know how many of you saw this going around, that there is now a combination of the two big colossal trends out there. Dubai chocolate is going as strong as ever. And then, of course, we've got the Labubu's, which is a funny one to say. I actually was kept thinking it was like Lalaboo. And so I was like typing that in. I was like, that's nothing. That's actually a baby wearing shirt that I own. But we've got the Labubu now with the Dubai chocolate in various forms. So if you have not heard of those, make sure you look those up and you'll be flooded with the streams of content. We have talked about Dubai chocolate a lot as well as a social media trend. But so moving on from that, just a call out that our next Simply Smarter webinar, that's the same series you are joining here with us now, is coming up August 14th on fall trends. So already, I know it's only July right now, but August is around the corner, which means we are another step closer to pumpkin spice and all of those things fall. So join me and Jacqueline next time around. We will be talking about fall trends, and make sure you check out all of our recent webinars as well. I know you were on the Data Central 500. I was on the Summer Sips, or no, that's not the one. Summer Sips, we had the alcoholic beverage, and then I was on with Claire in the non-alcoholic beverage. So make sure you check those out at that website. And then 2025 mid-year trends. This is the reason you all are here. This has just released. Was it last week, Jacqueline, or 2 weeks ago? You're on mute.
It was the week of the 4th, a special
Oh, yes.
gift.
Yes, it was a special gift for right before the holiday. So we do have in Report Pro right now, we have a mid-year trends preview report, so you can have access to that. And then, of course, probably the most common question we get on these webinars is, where can I get the deck, or can I get the deck after this? And so, yes, you are in luck. within 24 hours of us talking right now. If you have a subscription to Report Pro, Data Essential One, of course, our new amazing platform where you get everything under the sun from us, you can access that recording. It'll be posted along with the deck. And then if not, make sure you send us an email at hello@DataCentral to see how you can see what we are presenting today. And then one last little thing here before we get into the content. This is our full table of contents. So if you are not familiar with the whole mid-year trends report and what we will be covering in it, this is everything we have. So we really did a standout, amazing job. I know we all feel the same about that. Jacqueline will concur with that. He did both navigating tariffs as well as economic uncertainty and future food safety. So, but those first two we're not covering today because I think we were saying that we could talk for like 2 hours about those topics themselves, but those are in the full report.
I also will say before we move on that I did see a bunch of people mention tariffs in the comments when they were
Mm,
talking about their like big trend of the year.
yeah,
And I know next month's webinar will be on fall trends, but the one after that, as a sneak peek, will be our food service forecast webinar. So plenty, I'm sure, tariff content in economic uncertainty. So if you're looking for information about the economy, just tune in 2 months and you'll probably get a ton of that.
awesome. Yes, good plug. I forget about that. I always like think the next webinar ahead, but I am not 2 steps ahead in my current state of mind right now. But everything on here we in bold we are going to cover today, and then so much more in the full report. So definitely make sure to check that out or reach out to us if you do not have access to it. And so our first one, also a trend that I saw a lot of people saying was GLP-1s, right? That is a big thing that everyone's been asking about. They ask us a lot of times about GLP-1s. If you're not aware, that is all of those medications like Wegovy, Ozempic that are helping people lose weight. So, you know, of course, there is a lot of implications that could happen to the food and beverage industry as these are mostly, helping consumers lose weight by decreasing their appetite and things like that. So definitely something that we want to check in on, get that gut check on. So we asked a lot of different questions. We see that about 40%, 38% of consumers right now are either interested in GLP-1 drugs or they're already on them. So it's 11% currently use them. I wanted to look up when we did this question back in, was it 2024 or 2023, Jacqueline? And I want to say the stat was close to that. It might have been like 9% or something of consumers had been using them at that point. It was also fairly low. So right now that current usage is only at 11%, so not super high. But when you combine that with potential people, with those, that 27% of people who have heard of them and are interested, that is that bigger pool where we do want to kind of have some of the considerations about how this could affect us. On the flip side of that, I thought it was interesting that over 40% of consumers are aware of GLP-1s, have heard of them, in the news or maybe friends and family taking them, but they have no interest in using them or they don't have a need to use them. So, and this is a year ago versus last month, Amanda. So this was all fielded in May 2025. I almost said 2024, but no, this year, just 2 months ago, we fielded this. But I was comparing it with, I know we had asked in a previous mid-year trend report, or it might have been an annual trends report.
It was annual trends, I believe,
Annual trends.
2023 or 2024.
Okay. So that was kind of our first, question asking about GLP-1s when they first started bubbling up. But all of this data is very recent from May. And then we asked consumers too, what concerns do you have about taking GLP-1s? And this was among all consumers. So you didn't have to be taking it. And obviously, if you do have a lot of concerns, you're probably not taking it. So both of users and non-users, we asked them, what makes you concerned? And so, of course, like pretty much everything is that, too expensive, right? Maybe insurance doesn't cover it, or the shots are expensive. So that's the top reason. Followed right behind by physical side effects. And then also right below that, about a third of consumers are saying, it's still too new for this, for being used for weight loss specifically. They were diabetes drugs originally, but still too new, people say, to know about those long-term health effects. And I thought it was interesting too. In the report, we have like a couple more, we have some really fun nuggets about some generational concerns too. And so we could see things like Gen Z was more concerned, about some of things like body perceptions or being able to socialize with friends in the same way. It wasn't a top concern, but it was way more than the general population. So that makes sense. Of course, your appetites are going to change, what you're eating, and kind of your habits will change. And so Gen Z being that more like outgoing, social, forward, people are kind of considering that as one of those concerns. And then we ask also, how has GLP-1 medication affected your food intake? We hear that it's definitely something that will decrease your appetite. I remember a lot of family members of mine who are on it, like at Thanksgiving, could, hardly have anything at all, and that was like some of the news items as well around the holidays. Is that people can't have their huge Thanksgiving feasts maybe in the way that they had before. But so we saw about 40% of consumers who use GLP-1 said that they bought less food in general. And then we see 26% say they didn't really change the volume, but they definitely changed what they bought. And so wanted to shout out Shara from Data Central, who leads our amazing Elevate experience and Elevate community. She had wanted to dig deeper into kind of this very specifics, right, of what are people on GLP-1s increasing or decreasing when they are on those medications. So there were several more that we surveyed, but this is like the top 5 of net increase and the top net decreased. So we're seeing, people are eating more fresh fruit, more vegetables, those leaner proteins like the chicken, poultry, seafood, eggs, so very protein rich, right? And then we see a drawback in those sugary foods, fried foods, etc. And then we also asked about beverages too, right? So are you consuming less or more beverages when you're on GLP-1s? Interestingly enough, of all the beverages, it was a decrease. So the smallest decrease was of the caffeinated beverages, but then we see cocktails and a lot of that alcohol. Yes, Deepta, we just answered your question. So I didn't even see that. I think it popped up right as I was about to say it. So yes, we did ask about a variety of beverages as well as those alcohols. So you see that dwindling, decrease for folks who are on the GLP-1s on alcohol specifically. And then, of course, we ask operators too, kind of we hear in the news, like, is everyone, freaking out about this? How is this going to affect us? And I thought it was really interesting that the majority of operators, these two stats combined, 72%, either they're keeping 41% are keeping an eye on these things. They're not totally oblivious. They're like, we know GLP-1s could be a thing, but they don't really think that it's going to affect their business either way. And then about 30% of consumers say that they really don't think anything's going to change and they're just not concerned. So that's kind of the general consensus around operators. But still, with this kind of a lot of these new dietary needs, eating habits changing, we wanted to see, a lot of brands and even restaurants, which I'll talk about in a second here, have put up GLP-1 friendly items. So we wanted to see if consumers are interested in those. And we see about 50% are interested in, the menu items that might have a call out saying GLP-1 friendly, as well as those retail items. And I think that makes sense, right? It's one of those things that's like, It's not like you can only have this item if you're a GLP-1 user, right? It just kind of may signal to consumers that it's something that, may have some of these like more beneficial health aspects. And so we see, last year, I think this was Conagra became the first major brand in the US to show GLP-1 friendly. And so over 2 dozen of their healthy choice frozen meals, and I thought this was interesting too, that it doesn't say in big, bold anything that it's GLP-1 friendly, right? Because maybe some people have no idea what that means. Or they're like, well, I'm not using GLP-1, so I'm not interested, but they have instead that big on track, right? And they highlight first high protein, that fiber count, so that even if you're not on GLP-1s, you're like, oh, okay, I like high protein. Like fiber is good for me, I think, right? So kind of making it more approachable in that sense. And then also saying this is good for GLP-1 if you happen to be on those. And then I think we all have heard about this one. This was a big one from last year, the first QSR chain, Smoothie King, to have on their menu that they now have these GLP-1 friendly smoothies, kind of showcasing again. Big thing is that you need more protein intake. That's just like, I think one of the things that if you're on GLP-1s, like your doctor tells you, make sure you have more protein. And then also the fiber and no added sugar in these smoothies. And then one last one, Nestle last year had launched their first major, new brand in almost 30 years, Vital Pursuit. It has, again, those healthier, protein pastas, whole grains with fiber and all of that such. And then also like portion appropriate, because we hear a lot that, people just can't eat as much. So making it easy for consumers who are on GLP-1s or maybe just are looking for some of those same benefits. And now I'm going to turn it over to Jacqueline, who is going to talk about another 3-letter abbreviation, not GLP-1, but we've got UPF, not to be confused with UFO or anything to do with suntan lotion, but she's going to bring us through some ultra processed foods and beverages.
Thanks, Renee. Yeah, we're going to dive into the uncertainty that's been rising and growing around ultra processed foods and beverages. So, if we go to the next slide, I have a question for you all that I'd love for you to discuss in the chat. When you hear the term ultra processed in relation to food and beverage, what immediately comes to mind? There are a really wide range of ways to think about ultra processed foods, as you're seeing in the chat. And while technically items like canned vegetables could be considered ultra processed, they're generally thought of as more health forward and so not associated. But items like trans fats, preservatives, artificial food dyes, and more are generally what's associated when people think of ultra processed. Interestingly, consumer and operator familiarity with the term ultra processed is nearly equivalent. Both could benefit from more clarity around what specifically makes something considered ultra processed. In the past year, an increasing number of consumers, nearly 3/4 that you see here, have become more aware or concerned about ultra processed foods and beverages, which could be tied to a rise in media coverage as well as growing health concerns.
I
Artificial,
like,
oh, go
oh,
ahead.
sorry. I just was gonna comment. I like one of the, I think it was Douglas. I have to like read these names really fast as they're coming through and grab the comments that I really like. But I think it was Douglas who said something that you can't make in your own kitchen, right? I think
Yeah,
that's actually a
very
good
succinct.
definition. Very succinct. Yes, exactly.
Interestingly, consumer and operator familiarity, while it's nearly equivalent, when you look specifically at artificial dyes and the bans that have risen around it, 46% of consumers think they should be banned entirely. That's nearly half. Earlier this year, it was announced that petroleum based artificial colors are indeed going to be phased out of the US food supply entirely. And some of the dyes being phased out include red 3 and 40, blue 1 and 2, yellow 5 and 6, and green 3. Now, this is a little bit of a fun fact. Growing up, I was highly allergic to red 40 and my whole body would break out in hives. And so my parents would have to sort through any treats, any juices, any foods that I would consume to make sure that there was no red 40 hiding in anything, because it could even be in something like a pasta sauce, which you wouldn't necessarily expect. And so,
Mm.
what's helpful to me when I'm grocery shopping is when you do have those like big banners on products that are like artificial dye free. So then I don't have to flip over the box and read through the list to make sure that it's not containing this red 40.
Interesting. Did you have to like get each one individually tested, do you think? Because it sounds like people can be allergic to one and not, maybe not others, right? Because yours is
I don't
only red
remember
40.
because I was so young. My mom just made sure that I knew that I couldn't have anything that was red. I couldn't have anything orange. I couldn't have anything that would be a risk at all of an
Mm.
association with red specifically.
Unless they probably were like, an apple is fine, but if
Yeah,
it's something
yeah.
else, make sure you ask us, honey. Like I can see that.
Yeah, and I
And
remember, like, when I was trick or treating, I'd have to hand over all of my candy to
oh
my
no.
parents to sort through, and it was so sad when, like, someone would put, like, red Twizzlers or something in my bucket, and I knew those were gonna be taken away.
You should have gone through and been like, no red stuff, please. And they'd be like, oh, it's just like me if I'm like, I only want pink stuff. Like,
It maybe that's why I favor, like, certain colors over others actually for,
oh,
like,
maybe.
candies. Um, But if you're going to be removing these artificial dyes from the food supply, what are some of the alternatives to synthetic food dyes? And so we're going to go through a few of the alternatives now, but I already see people popping up in the chat with beet. Yes, beet is one. And there's a lot of
Mhm.
natural alternatives. So the ones that we're touching on here, it's really just a few, and there's many, many more. Ube
Mhm.
is seeing astronomical growth. It's up 275% on menus over the past 4 years. It's a Filipino yam that can lend everything from baked goods to lattes to ice cream, like you see here, this natural purple color. And look how bright and brilliant that is. If you
Mhm.
were at Data Central's Elevate experience this year, then you had the opportunity to try ube cupcakes from Genevieve's Bakery here in Chicago. I had one, and the flavor wasn't polarizing at all, yet the color was stunning and it was highly Instagrammable. Here we have butterfly pea flower tea, which has actually been approved by the FDA as a color alternative for blue or purple. You can see here how the butterfly pea flower tea is lending this bright color to items like ice pops, which would be so refreshing and perfect on a hot day like today, which we were just talking about. Maybe you need one of these. But it could also add color to cocktails, smoothies, soda, and more. And it's also seeing really huge growth, up 145% on menus over the past 4 years.
I thought you would maybe use more examples of purple since I know you love that color. Because we saw
Well,
a
I
lot of
fitted
people talking
too.
about like purple potatoes, obviously, the ube and everything else too. But there's a lot in that category, I feel. Even the
There
lavender,
is.
it's a lighter color, but adding a little bit of something in there.
Well, you see those layered beverages at Starbucks, like they had like the lavender matcha, and that was a really
Mhm.
interesting combo that they had going on. And speaking of matcha, it's been trending for a number of years now, but it has not stagnated. It's up 41% on menus over the past 4 years. And you can see how it can lend things like icing and frosting or baked goods or beverages, like this really bright green color. So you really aren't
Mhm.
missing out on like the social media worthy aspect of the color. If you're looking to achieve like a deep ruby red color, then think about hibiscus, especially for beverages like you see for the lemonade here. It's up 34% on menus over the past 4 years. And again, very highly social media worthy.
And also, I think of Ruafsa, which was one of our
Yeah.
2025 trends. That also has that very vibrant red color that could be, used in a whole variety of beverages as well as desserts.
And there's also a number of ways that you can achieve yellow naturally. I'm highlighting turmeric here, which is an Indian spice, but you could also achieve a brilliant yellow color by using saffron. Like if you think about that golden saffron rice that sometimes you would see at an Indian restaurant. And saffron was an ingredient Data Essential highlighted as one to have on the radar for 2025 and beyond. And it can also give items a premium or luxury connotation as well.
I see a lot of folks in the chat also talking about how not everything has to have color, which I think is
No, for
also
sure.
a good side of it as well. And I kind of wonder, maybe some of you chefs in the chat will know, but I kind of wonder if there's like one color that's like the hardest to achieve. Is there something
That's
out
a
there
super
that we're
interesting question.
right? Like maybe there isn't because all of these colors are blue. Yeah, green, blue. Or maybe like spirulina. There's that blue
Yeah, there's
spirulina.
blue spirulina. There's
Mm-hmm.
the butterfly pea flower can be blue.
Mm-hmm.
White you can achieve with calcium phosphate, and that's been approved by the FDA.
Oh,
I see a lot of
baked.
Black,
black in the chat. Activated charcoal has been a thing for a couple
Charcoal.
years
black
now.
sesame as well.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I will
Squidding.
say though, the interesting the thread that I'm seeing here in the chat that you mentioned that like maybe not all foods needs to have like, extra bright and bold coloring. I
Mm-hmm.
do think in a business sense though, I think that will probably involve like deconditioning consumers to not expect to eat with their
Yeah.
eyes first just as much. Because I think
Yeah.
consumers these days, especially young consumers, are
Mm.
so used to like gravitating towards foods that are attracting their visual attention. So it's gonna
Mm-hmm.
be hard on a business case to say like, oh, we'll make sure that our food is a little healthier, but it's gonna look really bad. It's gonna look like a piece of chicken breast, right?
Right.
So it's hard. But I think good things in life are often hard, and maybe this is one
Yeah.
of those things.
Maybe everything will go to my toddler's favorite color, which is beige everything. Like chicken nugget and that's it. Mac
Beige
and cheese,
babies.
beige and yellow. Ooh, let's launch a poll. So the
And
first of a few
yes, so now we
polls
have a
here.
poll. And in this poll, we're going to be asking you what generation do you think
Oh,
is most likely to avoid consuming aspects of ultra processed ingredients? And I'm going to have you all discuss this in the chat. Renee and Hui, if you don't know, share your guess. If you do already know from reading the report, then maybe hold back.
yeah, unfortunately, I have the advantage of having seen this already. And I
I
hope that
don't remember
nobody,
this one actually
yeah,
because
do you have a
the
guess
one
then?
well, I know something else that I accidentally just showed in the next one, but that was
Jeff.
actually about bands. So I did not actually accidentally reveal the answer because this is actively avoiding. But
Hmm.
I wonder if it's the same generation. So I'm thinking it's that one. But let me see. I'm thinking it could be boomers, but let me end the poll and share results.
And you're
So,
right. So the attendees are actually incorrect. It's boomers, that 8% of people who guessed correctly. And I'm betting that's surprising to a lot of people. But if we go to that next slide where we got a little bit of a sneak peek, um, boomers are most likely um, to say that they look to avoid artificial dyes specifically. And that's just highlighting one thing across the board. If you dive into the data in our full report, you'll see that boomers are more likely than every other generation to be avoiding all aspects of ultra processed foods and beverages.
hmm. Yeah, and I see some good explanations or some possible explanations in the chat here as well.
Yeah, I'm seeing those as well. And those are good. Looking at what aspects of ultra processed foods and beverages consumers overall are avoiding, the top three are added sugar, high fructose corn syrup, and artificial dyes. But are operators meeting this demand and eliminating the ultra processed products consumers are most looking to avoid? If we go to this next slide, we see that just under 70% of operators, they're saying it's hard to avoid using ultra processed ingredients in food service. And I can feel that. 78% say they need manufacturers to lead the way in reducing the need for ultra processed foods. But currently, only 5% of operators are saying that none of their menu includes ultra processed foods and beverages. Looking at the retail side of things, we're going to see an example of how just last month, Sam's Club announced that 96% of its members mark branded food and beverage products are now free from all ingredients on its made without list, which includes over 40 ingredients like artificial colors, high fructose corn syrup, and more, really showing that they're in the know and they understand their customer base. But how did they get to understand their customer base? They gathered insights directly from the customers. And that's how they developed their Made Without list. And they learned that 72% of their members that they surveyed are actively seeking minimally processed foods, and 90% either live or aspire to live a healthier lifestyle. So we do have that aspiration in there. I'm sure there are many people who aspire to live healthy, but are not truly making those healthier decisions. But it's still more than half, well over half of consumers who are seeking these minimally processed foods.
Gotcha. And now we're going to talk more about the food and all the food and the future of food safety.
Yeah, I thank you for that. I think this is a really interesting combination of sections to showcase because I do think
Mhm.
they relate very well to each other. But yeah, I want to take a couple more minutes of your time to talk about the future of food safety because in 2025, food safety is a top concern for both food companies and everyday consumers. If you could move on to the next slide, I found a really interesting stat over here. So the FDA's website actually has a running log of food and beverage recalls and alerts that they keep track every single month. And in 2024, the FDA logged over 300 food and beverage recalls and alerts, with an additional 137 cases tallied thus far in 2025, and that exceeded every single year prior. The unfortunate reality is, as the food industry and consumer behavior and climate change and all of these different factors affecting our larger food production ecosystem, food safety is just going to be a bigger issue going forward. In 2024, more people got sick from contaminated food than the year before, and the CDC estimates that 1 in 6 Americans contracts a foodborne illness every single year, whether that's avian flu, salmonella, listeria. I'm not going to mention specific brands, but a lot of the brands that we hold dear in the industry have been affected by this over the past year. So it's a super rough ecosystem right now, and I think the question on top of a lot of people's minds is how do we navigate these food safety incidents because they are going to happen. Um,
Right, right. I
so
have a quick
yeah.
question. Do you know when this was like when this was reported? Because when it says an additional 137 so far in 2025, I wonder if that was pretty early on in the year.
So I actually did the calculations myself based on the
Oh,
live
okay.
Excel sheet. So that was just when I was writing this report. So it's a couple weeks ago.
Oh, okay,
Yep.
okay.
Mhm.
Gotcha.
Yeah. So our research was meant to confirm how important is food safety on the minds of both consumers and operators. And our suspicions were validated, I think. In 2025, 70% of consumers say that they are concerned about commercial food safety, and nearly two-thirds are more concerned about food safety now compared to a few years ago. And both this general level of concern and this increase in awareness are pretty similar across all major demographics. So this is not a generational issue. It is kind of a gender issue in the sense that women are slightly more concerned than men about issues related to safety, which I don't think is a surprising stat to most people. But across all generations, it is something that is still on top of their minds. But that said, maintaining food safety isn't easy. You know, in the past year, we asked consumers and operators about different scenarios that they encountered related to food safety. And if you could forward to the next slide, Renee, here are some interesting things that we found. 45%, so nearly half of consumers heard about a product recall in food involving a food or beverage they usually or had recently purchased. 42% have avoided specific products or brands due to food safety concern. And also this extends to food service as well. 23%, so nearly a quarter actually got sick after eating at a food service venue, which I think is going to be a sore spot for operators who I think most of whom pride themselves on having really strong food safety practices. Um, Moving on the operator side, despite operators' best efforts and precautions, food safety incidents can and do often occur. In the past year, over half of operators had to dispose of the product that they've procured due to spoilage or contamination. 41% have also been affected by food recalls affecting their inventory, and over a third experienced a direct supply chain disruption related to a recalled or unsafe product. So all of these different food safety incidents and disease outbreaks are affecting the food industry on both sides of the equation, right?
Hmm. And I
Clearly,
was
oh yeah, go on.
Oh, sorry. I was just going to comment too, and maybe you'll get into this as well.
Hmm.
I didn't look too closely at your slides because I know they'd be awesome. But I think this is also one of those things where it's like you can do so much, right? But it's also like there are some factors that you can't. There's so much going into with the supply chain and just where things are coming from, and
Yep.
so many different variables that it's like one of those things that I don't know that anyone can actually guarantee like nothing's ever going to happen with our food. You know, it's just not possible. So I think that's something to always be you know, mindful of, that, you know, people could try and do a lot of different things, but no one is really immune from some of these issues.
No, totally. And I think, as we'll get into later too, I think food safety is really about process and not perfection because the
Hmm.
reality is like you cannot control every single factor
Right.
in life or in your operation, especially if you're operating at scale. Our
Hmm.
food industry is really, really connected. And because of that, the benefit, right, is efficiency.
Hmm.
But the other issue is when one, when one
Yep.
component across the entire supply chain falls,
Hmm.
everything else gets affected in a domino effect
Yep.
too.
Yeah,
So it's
it's
it's really
very hard.
tough.
Yeah, absolutely. So it makes it a really interesting and very important issue to kind of look at through your section here.
Totally. And speaking of importance, I also think the stakes are higher than ever because more consumers are aware of this now.
Mm.
Nearly 60% of consumers, according to our May 2025 data, agree that government agencies should enforce stricter regulations and penalties for food safety violations. Consumers are fed up and they want to see proper, repercussions to the companies that, encounter food safety violations. Maybe it's not the fairest thing possible, but it's clear that people want stronger regulation to make sure these things don't happen. And on the flip
Mhm.
side of it, the stakes are also high for operators because 2 in 3 worry that one single food safety mistake could
Yeah,
permanently damage their reputation. So this is
right.
really, really high stakes. But
Yeah,
all
that
of
is
this to,
really scary to think about, right?
Mhm.
Like one thing that you do not have control over could really hurt you for sure.
Yeah. And I think it's at the end of the day, it's really about trust, When something that you've purchased for years and years and now you learn that like it's causing disease for millions of Americans, that's gonna break your trust in that brand a little bit. And moving forward, I think we're gonna talk a little bit about different solutions that you can do as food
Hmm.
companies and operators to sort of mitigate all that. And I do think
Hmm.
that going forward, the solution for mitigating food safety is twofold in prevention and reaction. And I'm going to focus first on the reactive piece of it because I think for brands that have been embroiled by all of these different food safety incidents over the past year, I think the question on their minds is if something happens because you can't predict everything and in the event that something bad happens to your supply chain, some incident occurs, how do you respond to ensure that consumers don't lose too much faith in your brand? How do you recover and restore your brand image and restore trust that your consumers have for you? And the key thing here that we found, and we tested a bunch of different solutions to restore consumer trust, but the key thing really is just to be transparent. Communication is so key because nearly 100%, 95% of consumers really do want to be notified when food safety incidents and recalls occur, especially for products that they do purchase. And nearly 80% wish companies are more transparent about how they keep products safe. Yeah, Tyler, I am also super surprised when I saw this data. As a person, I really do want this number to be 100%, but
Yeah.
maybe sometimes people don't want to know so that
Uh,
information doesn't hurt them. You know what I mean? Like if
right.
I'm not aware of it, yeah, it's
Hmm.
it's out of sight, out of mind.
Yeah.
But the key is people really do want to know. If something
Hmm.
really bad happens, they want to know about it, whether it's through news coverage on TV, if it's in-store signage at the grocery store, if it's email or social media posts directly from the brand itself. All of these different information channels are really crucial in disseminating that information to consumers who really do want to be in the know.
Hmm.
Um, this stat at the bottom here, the transparency stat, is also indexes highly among women than men. So a lot of women really do want companies producing food to be more transparent about how they keep their products safe. There's one other stat that I didn't include on the slide, but is in the final report, and it is that nearly 60% of consumers, especially Gen Z and millennials, would pay more for food products that come packaged with higher safety certifications or traceability guarantees. So this is something that people are saying that they would spend more money on. So that just shows how important it is to their minds, right?
What was
And
that
then moving,
percentage again?
I believe it was 56%, but it's in the
Wow.
final report. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah,
That,
and
yeah.
actually paying more too.
Hmm.
As folks who look at all the data all the time, that is the big key, right? Because I think a lot of consumers can say, yes, I want all of these different things. They don't necessarily want to pay more for those things, right? So when you see that they actually want to pay more for things, I think that is deserved to be highlighted and underlined, right?
Yeah, and I do, and Jason, I see what you say in the chat, and I do agree that, the rift between what
Mm-hmm.
people say in a survey and what they do in real life
Mm-hmm.
is present. But I think even the willingness to admit that they would want to pay more for something, especially in today's
Mm-hmm.
economy, not to overuse that phrase too much,
Mm-hmm.
is notable, I think. But
Mm-hmm.
moving forward, now that we've communicated what the issue is, how do brands move forward? Um, and I think many will be relieved to hear that restoring trust among consumers really just takes time. Food safety incidents at the core, like I mentioned, is really a breach of trust. You lose faith in a brand that you've purchased for a long time and you don't know what to do. You find you have to search for new alternatives, right? But redemption is possible. If you could move one more slide forward, Renee, in a survey that we conducted in February about recalls, 77% of consumers actually say that they will go back to purchasing products or brands affected by recalls, whether
Mm-hmm.
it's immediately after an incident is resolved or they might wait a couple weeks, a couple months just to, make sure that things are really okay. But this
Mm-hmm.
just shows that, as long as you're transparent, as long as you're consistent, as long as you communicate the things that your brand is doing to prevent these things from happening again, that there is a total real path to restoring consumer trust. And sometimes it just takes time. So it is not the end of the world if an incident occurs, because in today's, large interconnected supply chain, things really do happen.
Right.
And no matter how hard you try to mitigate these issues, being able to respond appropriately, I think, is also half the battle.
And
But
this is a great stat, the 77% going back.
mhm.
I think that's a really good sign as well.
And then moving back to the other side of it too, on the prevention side, there are actually so many different ways that operators can implement to make sure that they mitigate issues or search and assess risk before they even happen. And we had a huge list of different strategies that operators are already doing. In the last year, 49% of operators have amped up staff training specifically on food safety protocols in the past year. And the other issue also is traceability and making sure that you're aware of where your ingredients is coming from and what is happening in your kitchen, where these ingredients are moving, how they're being processed. And one of these ways is FISMA 204, which I believe is something that's been a deep topic of conversation in the industry. We have a whole section on FISMA 204 compliance in the full report itself, but I'll share one stat here, which is that 44% of operators are already fully or mostly prepared to comply with the upcoming traceability rules imposed by the FDA's traceability regulation. So that's just another way to make sure that you keep great track of where your ingredients and products are moving through the entire supply chain. Um, and then the final piece of this too, moving forward, I think, is technology. So if you move on to the next slide, Renee, 69% of operators agree that investing in food safety technologies like smart monitoring system, digital logs, AI-driven systems is worth the cost.
Again,
I have an
putting their
ex
money where like their values are.
Totally. Yeah, absolutely. And I have an example here, actually two examples here of things that are already in the marketplace for folks. First is Operandio. This is just one of many companies that are offering digital solutions to help brands keep track of temperature monitoring, help brands monitor and automate and streamline record keeping across many different aspects of both their operation, but also for multi-unit operators who have different locations to worry about. Smart Sense is another one too. Thank you, Angelica. Um, and then also, I don't want to harp on too much about artificial intelligence because I feel like I've become that guy, right? But I do think that AI-driven solutions will, transform food safety management in the future. And the biggest example I have here is that it's already taking place on the biggest scale of all. The person you see on your screen right now is Marty Makari. Forgive me if I pronounced that last name wrong, but he is the chief commissioner at the FDA. And then just last month, in June 2025, the FDA has officially launched ELSA, which is a generative AI tool designed to help identify high priority targets for food safety inspections. Is designed to help agency staff cut down on bureaucratic work and really shortening the time needed for scientific evaluations. So AI solutions already are being rolled out across like large and small institutions. And whether or not you like artificial intelligence, I think it's really hard to avoid them going forward, and they're going to keep transforming the industry moving forward. So that's everything I have on food safety and the future of food safety.
Thank you, Lee. Do you know, does Elsa stand for something or it's just Elsa?
I don't
Any
think
idea?
it does, but
I
I can look it up.
I
Yeah, I
wonder,
don't
I don't
know.
know why. I get the connotation I get is I'm in my mind, I'm like, I wonder if that's like keeping things cold
Cold, right?
or
Yeah, I was thinking the
frozen.
exact same thing. Yep.
Like
Um,
cold is good for food, so maybe that's part of it or
yeah, the
something
cold
like
does
that.
not bother the FDA anymore. Um,
Or something about letting it go. I don't know.
I actually don't know if they want to let it go.
No, no, but not maybe not letting or like I don't know. Let your worries go because Elsa's gonna
Right.
help
Yeah,
you or
I see the
something. I
logical
don't
leap.
know. There could be
I do, I
I don't
do.
know. My it's what popped into my head.
Mm-hmm.
But thank you so much, Lee, on that. And there's so much more information, as we said, on both food safety as well as those two monster chapters on navigating tariffs and the economic uncertainty, and so much that we dives into in those. We're going to take a little pivot here with one of my favorite sections that we always do in mid-year trends, and it is more or less kind of random questions that we ask consumers, choosing from this or that, two different statements, to kind of see general eating behaviors, general just like personality things. So in the past, we've asked, are you a morning person, which I am definitely not? Are you a night owl? Kind of leaning towards, some of these insights you can kind of glean for things like late night menus, right? If no one is a night owl, maybe we shouldn't have late night menus, that sort of thing. We've asked this year, I did like, do you like crusts or no crusts? So for pizza or for things like bread, I am a no cruster, and thankfully I have married a cruster. So all of the crusts left over from my pizza, I just toss right to my husband, and that works out really well. And then, oh, I see some conflicting. Someone said Elsa's not an acronym, but then we see someone, Emily, who just said that it is. So we'll have to dig into that a little bit more to see. And it was just a random curiosity question on my part, but we'll see if ChatGPT is right or wrong on that one. So we'll dive into some of these this or that questions, and I'll have this one will be a poll. So do you prefer, we had this actually, a client asked one of our customer folks about this. And as we talk about little treat culture, that was one of our 2025 trends. Is, we want, a customer wondered whether people usually have a little treat by themselves or as a group. So I'm going to bring up that poll here. Back to this poll. And let's see. So, do you personally prefer indulging in a food or beverage related treat by yourself or with a group? And Jacqueline and Hui, I'm curious, since you can't take the poll, I'm curious as to what you prefer.
I
Uh,
definitely am someone who's a by yourself person. Actually, the drawer that's in front of me at my desk right now is filled with crunch bars. Those are my favorite
Nice.
types of candies. And so after a webinar or a big project, I treat myself.
Yes. I like the sneaky snacks, Michael says. Gotta hide them.
I'm unfortunately on the opposite camp. I'm a
Oh.
chronic like meal skipper, unfortunately. And so I will only be reminded to eat things by when I'm around people. Um Before we close the poll, I will say that this is one of those like really lovely joys in market research when the numbers are
Mhm.
actually so like magically clean.
Yes, yes,
And the poll
true.
I think is pretty consistent with that too. So I'm excited to show
Yeah.
folks where
So
consumers
let's
ended up.
end that and let me share the results. So we are pretty much split here. And even in our group, we're a little bit, well, I am also, I don't know if it's a mom thing because I'm just like, sometimes I need 2 seconds by myself. And so I like having a treat by myself. And, I just take 2 seconds to like, throw stuff down my gullet and hurry up and,
Hmm.
get my treat that way. But so actually, this was the only tie that we had in our full report. So, as was with the audience, this was actually a complete tie that 50% of consumers like to prefer to indulge by themselves, and 50% like to indulge with family or friends. But I think that's a good point in just seeing that, little treat culture can be both ways, right? It can be that little sneaky snack that you get away from everything else in life and just kind of have it to yourself, or it can be one of those occasions where people are going together in big groups to have more of an experiential treat together. So both are valid here, or both are
Yeah.
shown with the results.
I consider that I call that a unicorn stat because in all of our years in this industry, like how often do you see a perfect 50-50 split for anything,
Yes,
right?
yes.
Like
I
it's
don't
it's
think
so
we've
fun.
ever had a complete total split on things. So that was very interesting for sure. And then we also have, I thought, with some of the higher prices and things like that, if you cannot get fresh produce or you do not want to pay for the fresh produce, and share your answers in here in chat. Do you prefer canned produce or frozen?
See, we're a
Uh,
split household. I am
mhm.
a frozen person, always have
Oh.
been, and my husband is canned and always has been. And so we
Mm,
have both because
okay.
he was a midnight canned beans person. He would get up at midnight
What?
and just heat up some beans from a can and eat them.
I've never heard of a midnight canned bean person.
It's a weird thing, but I started having to carry canned green beans in my house.
Oh, it's green beans, so
Interesting.
it's not like I thought I was assuming
Okay.
No
like
green
pinto
beans.
beans or black beans.
Oh,
No
Gotcha.
green
okay.
beans.
Interesting. What about you, Hui?
I would say yeah, frozen. No, I'm a little mix of both. I think
Yeah.
frozen, yeah, canned corn I do use, canned beans I do use. My partner's
Mhm.
Mexican, so we have a lot of canned refried beans going
I was
around.
gonna say, yeah, there are some things that are kind of, more of a canned item. Overall, I love frozen, the texture and everything like that, but I don't have a lot of room in my freezer. So I
That
do
too.
have the canned. But it seemed like most of the audience was saying frozen. And so that agrees here with the results is that over 70% of consumers prefer that frozen produce. And yeah, it might just depend on what's on sale or what you can fit in your house, right? Do you have room in the freezer or do you have room in the pantry? And then one last one that I will do a poll for is, do you prefer hot beverages or cold beverages? And so if you have listened to me before on some of these, you will know that I am staunchly an iced person, because my parents always forced hot water and things like that to me. So my ultimate act of rebellion, before I dyed my hair, was to always have iced stuff. So let's see. Oh, how come I can't launch this? Oh,
Yeah, it launched the old
Well,
poll for
yeah,
me.
it launched the other one, but I am seeing a
oh,
lot
stop
of
sharing.
people in the
Launch.
chat
Okay.
oh, there it is, who are
Okay.
saying,
Yeah.
and I
Sorry
think
about
it's
that.
honestly going to come down to demographics and what generation you're part of. Because,
Mm.
like my mother in law, she will never have a cold beverage. It always has to be hot, no matter
Oh.
Hmm.
the
Yep.
season. But for
Yep.
Hmm.
Dan, my husband, it doesn't matter the season, it will always be iced.
Depends on weather. Okay, interesting. Yeah, for me, it's always iced. I don't care if it's -2 degrees outside. But yeah, if we had mostly almost 70% say iced here. And that does kind of go with again um our survey here, and I was kind of surprised that it was such a strong leaning on iced beverages. But I think it was Claire who mentioned that there's just a more variety of iced beverages. You
Hmm.
think of hot coffee and hot tea, and if you don't consume those, but I think next year we should ask like iced coffee or hot coffee. just
Yeah.
to even the playing field a little bit.
I also think
But
this one, out of the three that we've asked so far, I think this one
mhm.
is the one that our audience would most appreciate a both option,
Yeah.
um, to
But you
break the
have to
tie.
pick. You have to
Yeah.
pick. It's what do you prefer,
Some are saying it's
So
seasonally dependent, and since we're asking in July, they currently prefer iced. But if we asked
Yeah.
in December, they would probably say
okay.
hot.
Okay. But see, I do it all year round. I think it seems like a lot of iced people do it all year round. So, because it's like, I'm not drinking the iced coffee in, -2 degrees outside. I'm going to be indoors. So, I don't know. Anyway, thank you for playing along. And then our last section here, we are giving you a sneak peek at 2026 trends. So, even though, again, it's only July, we are going to be having our annual trends, I think, bigger and better and faster and quicker than ever before this year. Fingers crossed, right, Jacqueline and we. So we are going to be, already been talking a lot about 2026 trends. So we wanted to give you just a sneak peek of three that should be on your radar for the next year ahead and even great for right now. So this makes my Chinese soul very, very happy. Fermented black beans. If you're familiar with this one, it's very umami rich, really kind of a little funky, salty, just adds like that flavor punch to a lot of different dishes. So it is black soybeans. So, not sometimes you think black beans and you think of, like Mexican black beans, not those. We're thinking it's black soybeans fermented with salt and something that's similar to koji. And it's used in a lot of traditional Chinese and Korean dishes, but even at Maxwell's Trading in Chicago, they have it with black sea bass. I think they have it right now. They've had it in other dishes. So just popping up across a couple of different menus, as well as, just follows on that fermented trend where 46% of consumers we see in our consumer preferences platform, 46% of consumers who have tried fermented foods love or like them. So, following on those heels of that fermented and funky. And then this one is probably not a surprise to everyone, but meat is back, right? We hear so much about carnivore diets, and I don't know that so many people are eating sticks of butter, as a little snack. That does not appeal to me. But we've got carnivore diets. We've got people really honing in on protein and then just having those ingredients that you can pronounce, know where it's coming from. So meat is really, making that comeback. And then we see this more with millennials as well. So, 17% more millennials describe themselves as meat eaters from 2021 to 2024 versus having a decrease of vegetarian millennials. So, I remember we double checked this stat, Jacqueline, because we thought, wow, 17%, that's quite a lot. But millennials are kind of leading that charge. And then our last one, of course, we always have to have some beverage trends in here. So we wanted to highlight kind of a cross between, global beers and global beverages, along with sustainability that's already, of course, always gaining traction and keeping that momentum. Along with some health benefits as well. So we see ancient grain beers made with things like quinoa or fonio, kind of a nice twist on traditional beers and also can be more sustainable. And so, just as we wrap up here, fall trends, like I said, I love this little picture with the ghost here. It looks like a very friendly Casper the Ghost. Nothing too scary on this fall trends. It'll be very nice and friendly, I promise. Jacqueline and I will be back August 14th. I don't know if you guys will have your pumpkin spice lattes yet, but if you do, bring them on the call because we're going to talk about fall trends. And of course, pumpkin is always one of those. So, and check out our Simply Smarter series, any more of the older episodes as well on our website there. And then shamelessly, I always have to include my babies at some point if I can. And so here are my little babies. I love this picture because I literally told Luke to like pose. And look at this. He poses and Franny poses. So I just have to laugh at this photo that they are perfectly photogenic and love that. So until next time, drop us a line if you need anything at all. Follow us on LinkedIn if we can ever help you with anything. And reach out with hello@datacentral.com. So,
Yeah,
um,
speaking of data, hello at datacentral.com. I see a question from
mhm.
Lily here. Kendra's been posting this in the chat, but if you didn't manage to catch it, if you are a Report Pro subscriber, you can get a recording and the deck on Report Pro itself. But if you do not have access to Report Pro, reach out at hello@datacentral.com and we'll see if we can get you a copy of the deck.